There are some games that I just can't believe exist on the Nintendo Switch, and Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted 2 is absolutely one of those games. This was originally a VR experience built to immerse players in its spooky world, yet here we are with a port on the Nintendo Switch. Excuse me, Freddy fast sneezed. Now, if you follow the FNAF series, you might know that this isn't the first time they've done something like this. The original Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted also made the jump from VR to the Nintendo Switch. And what makes this interesting is that this Switch port was absolutely atrocious. When I played every Five Nights at Freddy's game on Nintendo Switch, which you should check out after this, that game was by far the worst optimized on this console. Between the horrendous frame rate and motion blur that made it impossible to see what was happening, it felt like a lazy cash grab. So understandably, my expectations on Help Wanted 2 on Switch were low, especially when you consider that it was just randomly shadow dropped, with almost no discussion around it. Seriously, I haven't heard anyone talk about the Switch port of Help Wanted 2 yet, so let's do that now. The game kicks off with a chilling introduction that sets the mood right away, showing off just how creepy it can be. The main hub is the pizzeria. Here you can uncover some crazy deep FNAF lore or just goof off, but most importantly, access the computer to choose from various games organized into these folders. There are 6 sets of locations and areas, each packed with eerie mini-games. But before we can talk about the mini-games themselves, let's discuss what really caught me off guard: the Switch-specific features and optimizations. Right off the bat, just in the introduction, I was gladly surprised to see that there was the inclusion of touchscreen support, which was incredibly limited in other FNAF games and something they needed to create just for this port, as Help Wanted 2 doesn't exist for mobile devices like the others did. So it's already a really great sign that they actually put effort into tailoring the experience for the Switch. Another massive game changer compared to the last games is the inclusion of gyro controls, which was a huge help throughout this game, mainly because there are a lot of tasks that you need to complete quickly, and fiddling with the Joy-Con's tiny sticks is way too difficult, especially for how precise you need to be in some of these games. But as I talk about these mini-games, I'll go in depth on the controls as well, and see really just how big of a difference they actually make. The mini-games are grouped into 6 categories. First, we have the Backstage mini-games. This brings us, well, backstage. The first mini-game I played was a paint-by-numbers game, which is scarier than it sounds. You're first greeted by Sunny. Just look at how cute this little guy is. He guides you on how to play the game in a joyful, yet terrifying voice, like how to pick the proper item and mix paint, all that fun stuff. And if you thought that this was just a peaceful game with a FNAF theme, well, you're wrong, because if you mess up, he rips your face off. The tension is real, and the gyro controls only make it worse by showing just how much my hands were shaking. Thank you, Gyro, for showing off my trembling fear. Another Backstage game has you prepping animatronics for their big show. While it's less exciting than painting, it still keeps the pressure on with the constant threat of failure. This wasn't as fun, but follows closely to the idea of the first one. And yes, there is still painting in this, and it gets much harder, but they all do. Anyways, next. Another set of mini-games revolved around food prep. This is exactly how it sounds. You play the role of the human serving dishes to robots when they demand food. The list of items you need to prepare shows up on the display above you, and you must follow it exactly. Get an order wrong or take too long, and you'll be mauled. Oh, how fun. And yes, this happened to me several times. But I eventually figured it out, and it quickly became one of my favorites. They also introduced an incredibly helpful snapping mechanic with the D-pad, which lets you quickly shift your view to critical areas, like looking up at the menu with a single button press. Combined with gyro controls, this system smooths out a lot of the frustrations that could come from a non-VR port. With the combination of these two, I was unstoppable. And yes, this was also in the first Help Wanted game, but the snapping mechanic in the first Help Wanted game was very jarring, especially with the extremely low frame rates of that game. It's a lot cleaner here. We also have the staff-only mini-games. These bring you face-to-face with the animatronics, which would be horrifying in VR, but thankfully just as bad on the Switch. The plot of the first mini-game was to retrieve an ice cream cake from Glam Freddy. This required me to unfreeze his hands, replace batteries, make sure he didn't overheat, and of course, get the poop scared out of me a few times. But there was a few times in this one that I had a few Switch-related issues, like when a diagram showed up, and maybe my eyesight was bad, or I drank too much stupid juice, but I couldn't read what this diagram was asking me to do, because the resolution was pretty low, and I just didn't understand. The resolution of this game overall isn't really that great. It's probably around 720p max, which is fine in most cases, but makes things pretty difficult when you need to look at small, tiny details, which is a common occurrence in this game. This was also one of the more precise mini-games, and due to the mix of gyro and the finicky right stick on the Joy-Con, the wrong buttons can definitely be pushed accidentally. Anyways, I managed. Another mini-game you'll find in the staff-only catalog are the ones with your boy, Helpy. Here, you need to diagnose and treat his wounds from the playground beatings, all while trying to keep him silent so that the scary bear doesn't sneak up on you and take your life. These ones were fun and definitely required a lot of focus for sure, and I'm a doctor. Let's get some more fog in here. This was dumb. We also have the Fazcade minigames. These include carnival-like activities, such as Bonka Bon Bon, a whack-a-mole inspired game that benefits immensely from the Switch's touchscreen controls. Playing it with the controller is fine, but having two hands to smack with is much better than having just one. And with the implementation of touchscreen, it is super helpful in this regard. Fazcade minigames also involve some laser shooting challenges, which make excellent use of gyro aiming. These aren't the scariest games, but they are actually pretty fun and can be very rewarding when done successfully, especially with the Music Man himself. Just look how massive this guy is. Again, imagine playing this in VR. I would pee myself. Now we have the ticket booth minigames. Here's where the real terror actually ramps up, like the carousel, which was terrifying, but one of the funnest games yet. Let me just say that I enjoyed these games for the same reason a lot of people do, the thrill. Trying to complete these tasks over and over again, all while trying not to get jump scared, is quite the exhilarating challenge and is crucial to enjoying a horror game like this. Now, this carousel requires you to fix some of the wiring while trying to defend yourself from this fella. And how do you defend yourself? By flashing him. So the constant fear of not knowing where he is while desperately trying to fix the carousel while it's moving is a blast. It's pure chaos, especially when the carousel catches fire in the final phase. But like, whoa! There are other ticket booth minigames like Foxy's Log Ride, which isn't what it sounds like, and another carousel level. I'm toast. And the final of the 6 categories is the sister location folder. These minigames are based off sister location. Now, once again, if you've seen my video where I played every FNAF game, you might recall that sister location on Switch did not run very well and was pretty poorly optimized. But I'm happy to say this time it isn't bad at all. Like in the Ballora Gallery minigame. This is essentially the same minigame from sister location, but with better enhanced visuals, animations, and sounds. Also, some additional gameplay mechanics like throwing away these ballerina thingies so that they don't smoke you, like I've done to myself in this room with the fog machine that I paid $30 for on Amazon. Now, you're probably not going to believe me when I say this, but they also use another Switch-specific feature that helps make the gameplay experience amazing. And I haven't seen a non-Nintendo game do this in a while. They perfectly utilized HD rumble. The way they did this was simple but genius. The Joy-Con will rumble on whichever side Ballora is on. And it's not just a basic rumble. It feels like something is scraping across the ground through your Joy-Con. It's an insane detail, and it even changes as you move your head in game to look around. This added so much immersion, I might as well have been playing it in VR. Just insanely cool and creative. Inside the sister location minigame pack, we also got some OG feeling minigames. It's the classic formula of switching between cameras, closing the doors, and preserving as much power as possible until 6 a.m. And they nailed it. Not only does the lock on camera help this, but it just looks really cool and is optimized very well for the system. And those are just some of the minigames that are in this. On top of all of this, the progression system is very addicting. Once you complete a minigame, the next one that unlocks is generally harder. There are also some secrets in the main hub that you can discover while you play, which unlocks even more levels, and best of all, juicy lore. This isn't an aspect that I'm completely interested in, but even sometimes I get caught up in the FNAF lore, and it's a guilty pleasure, you could say. Now, the big question is, how does it perform on Switch? Well, unfortunately, it seems that the frame rate is locked at 30 frames per second, which is still much better than the 15 frames per second the last game ran. But as I always say, as long as the frame rate is consistent, it's fine with me. And this game runs at 30 frames per second consistently throughout the entire thing. And I never noticed any weird frame dips or spikes or anything like that. It might have struggled a little bit while the carousel was on fire and burning up, but nothing else that's noticeable at all. I'm happy with the performance. Now the graphics overall, as I mentioned earlier, the resolution is a little low at around 720p, but everything that's necessary seems to be intact. The gritty, mangled textures on all the animatronics are here, the environments all look dungy and beat up enough, and the lighting in general holds up surprisingly well, keeping the overall eerie atmosphere the game's striving for. So, to recap, this port has in-depth controls with gyro and touchscreen that actually make a difference, makes good use of the Switch hardware with the HD rumble, and of course, we can't forget that it looks great on those OLED screens in handheld mode as well. It is very dark if you keep the brightness at default, but you can turn it up if it's necessary. So how broken is Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted 2 on the Nintendo Switch? Well, surprisingly, it's not broken at all. Unlike a lot of other Five Nights at Freddy's ports we got, especially its predecessor, I am thoroughly impressed and would recommend this version above all others unless you have a VR headset. If you don't have a VR headset, this is an excellent way to experience the game. And I don't say that often for Switch ports. The portability of the Switch and the exclusive features make it a solid choice, even above other non-VR versions. This ain't broke, it's great. And if you want to see me play every Five Nights at Freddy's game on Switch, click this button. Please consider becoming a channel member, liking, and subscribing. I hope to see you in the next one. See you later.